first video essay. So I've never done this before. I'm taking after what I know from the greats I've seen before. Gonna complain about the fucking people working on their yard over there, even though I have no right to complain about that. Keep your yard clean. I don't have a mic, but I do have my hairbrush, so I'll be talking into that, so I feel like my hands have something to do. And like every other great video essayist, I am hiding the monstrosity that is my room back home from college. But none of that is important because today we will be talking about school lunches and why they suck. Sometimes they don't suck in certain scenarios. They used to really suck. We'll get into just how they sucked in just a sec. Well, unlike the greats of video essayists, what's that even English? Whatever. Unlike the great video essayists of our time, I have not learned the art of not reading from a script, or at least making it look like I'm not reading from a script. So y'all might be here, but my eyes will probably be over there. You're gonna get the information no matter what, I promise. But yeah, school lunches. You love them, you hate them. You probably don't feel too strongly about them either way because they didn't taste that good, but they had enough sugar and fat to keep you coming back, so it probably balanced out somewhere in the middle. If you're like me, a certain image came to mind of like, you know, Pizza Friday, that was exciting, right? Or like sometimes you get one of those like little juice pops in there. I personally loved the blue raspberry juice pops. Those things were fire. So no matter who you are, I almost guaranteed that a balanced plate of like proteins and like whole grains and, you know, fresh vegetables did not come to your mind. Personally, fresh was the last word I would ever use to describe anything I ate at school lunch, especially the day when I saw them like squeeze the cheese out of this little bag. It like wasn't how cheese should not be liquid. Cheese shouldn't naturally be liquid at a room temperature. Anyways, they're working with what they got, and we will get into that later. Oh, and there's, I'm gonna pray this audio works, so I'm not refilming this. For a program with origins that were meant to train our country's children for war, which is true. How did we end up with meals that are like literally killing our children and killing us and killing everyone and destroying our minds and everything like that? How did we end up here? More importantly though, who let this slip by? And who is the main entity that our federal school lunch program is aiming to help and protect? Is it the kids? I think you can guess from my tone that I don't really think that's the case. Let's get into it. Okay, wait. Okay. So the school lunch program didn't originally start with like training our children for war, but like our government didn't super care about it until like that became an issue after the Great Depression. The origins of our school lunch program today can first be found in the work of philanthropic organizations popping up around the turn of the century as a result of the growing middle class wealth in the post-Civil War era, alongside the set of like new issues coming up as the result of industrialization. There was a lot of new problems that were popping up, and people were starting to have the time and money and vision to care. So these organizations would give away free meals to children in an effort to combat malnutrition, but these organizations were self-run and not consistent over all the states. It was just organizations here and there when they felt like it, but this was not a federal program. Around 1894, some cities in the economically stable Northeast, but they were giving out penny lunches, which was the equivalent of like less than 30 cents today. So still super, super, super cheap. And schools in rural areas did fall behind due to smaller spaces, like not having enough room for the equipment, but also especially like lower funding. They just didn't have the money to provide food to all these students, which granted they had less, but there's generally lower income areas. But we'll see that trend continue on today. Don't worry, we'll come back to that because it didn't go away. Despite the hard work of these organizations and cities, their efforts were not enough to outmatch the damage done by the Great Depression in the 1930s. Thus leading many boys and men drafted to World War II to be rejected due to malnutrition. Then they started giving a shit because they said, aw, like we don't have enough people to go fight. And they finally acknowledged this as a nationwide issue, and President Harry S. Truman signed the National School Lunch Act in 1946, which said, "It is hereby declared by the policy of Congress as a measure of national security to safeguard the health and well-being of the nation's children and to encourage the domestic consumption of nutritious agricultural commodities and other food by assisting the states through grants and aid." Oh, this is long, I'm sorry. through grants in aid and other means, and providing an adequate supply of food and other facilities for the establishment, maintenance, operation, and expansion of nonprofit school lunch programs. I might start making more of these just because the lighting is this good. Thus, the federal school lunch program was born. In more recent years, the program took a heavy hit due to the Reaganomics era. That was kind of like, hey, like, we don't want government funding things. That caused a lot of budget cuts, leading to many schools having to rely on contracts with fast food corporations, getting their grubby little hands in there, and also like soda companies as well, just so they could provide meals for the sheer amount of kids that they need to provide meals for. And then 2010, I'm sure you've heard, the Obama administration, led by Michelle Obama, passed the Healthy, Hungry-Free Kids Act that sought to reform school lunch standards based on revamped nutritional guidelines that limited things like salt and saturated fats, and made sure meals had to have adequate amounts of macronutrients of carbs, fats, and proteins. Foreshadowing. This didn't go how it needed to. So let's talk about what is arguably the biggest success of the school lunch program. And I can't decide what angle I want to hold this at, so I'm probably just gonna be spinning around. So we're gonna backtrack to the origins of the school lunch program. Let's take a look at malnutrition's correlation with school performance. So food insecurity is both an acute and chronic hindrance to school performance. When children are developing and aren't able to have proper access to nutrients, it can halt important development that can impact not only cognitive abilities, such as, doing math in school, but also social skills and of course, physical health. I did want to bring up, not only can hunger harm learning abilities, but it can also, contrary to popular belief, cause obesity. And this is really important to consider when talking about unhealthy foods in school. Undernutrition during fetal/childhood development can alter the way that a person's nutrient absorption system works. So this can cause the fetus/child to develop a system that will increase their intake of nutrients due to lack of availability in order to help them survive. So this is like in a survival situation, when someone's developing, like their body says, we're not gonna throw out more nutrients, we need to absorb as much as we can to help them survive because they're living off of less available nutrients. And so the person's body will become used to increased absorption and be more susceptible to weight gain because of this, as the body is used to operating in survival mode, even if there are ample nutrients available. When the child goes from being in the womb and developing there based on what their parents are eating, when they go into like the real world and they get older, if they decide to eat more calorie dense or unhealthy foods, high in saturated fats and salts, their body's gonna absorb way more of it than it needs to. And that can lead to someone being a lot more susceptible to unhealthy weight gain. On the more acute side, which I wouldn't actually call acute just because food instability is not an acute thing. It's not just a here and there thing. It's systemic, it sticks around. But for the purposes of what we're talking about here, we'll call this the more acute side of food insecurity. Hunger creates psychological barriers for learning, and so this is when the body is hungry and it needs more energy, it's gonna focus all of its abilities on finding food, and a part of that energy goes towards telling the brain to search out food. And so when the brain is focused on that, it's not gonna focus on the math problem, the essay, any things like that. It's not gonna focus on note-taking. It's gonna focus on go get your food, you need to get food. A study by Cal State Fullerton economics professor Larry L. Howard, and I know economics doesn't sound very related to what's going on here, but this professor does a lot of work around food insecurity and the economic impact of choice. He has done a bunch of different projects on this. I guarantee he is a good source in the field. He found that, quote, he found that children experiencing an early transition from food insecurity in first grade to food insecurity in third grade had even larger impairments that persist through fifth grade. So essentially what we're getting at here is that food insecurity, these issues, they persist all through very, very important developmental years. And we're living in a time when children are falling behind to extreme degrees that I could talk about for hours, but this video is supposed to be 7 to 10 minutes long, so Matthew, I'll spare you the time. I also did want to address every other system in this country and in the world that impacts our experience in different amounts in relation to a person's demographics. namely race. The 2020 US Census data found that Black people face the highest rates of poverty, being at nearly double the national rate, with Black children experiencing hunger at almost 3 times the rate of white children. That's fucking insane. I mean, like, we've been new at this point. Like, this is not a secret to anyone, but it's like, it's shocking, but it's not. I just think it's really important to address this disparity and to not look at systemic issues as if everybody is experiencing them in the same way at the same measure. Reality is that these issues impact different groups differently, and different experiences and impacts on different demographics need to be addressed. Just keep that in mind when talking about this. All of this food insecurity, this I'd say is where school lunches probably serve their best role, where they come in to help. So this is where school lunches come to help, or more accurately, where they should come in to help. You probably told me my tone in this video so far, and likely like your entire life experience, that this is not entirely the case. But this is the most positive part. So we're gonna acknowledge what worked. With the current National School Lunch Program, students qualify for free lunch based on family income, with those below 130% of the poverty line qualifying for free lunch, and those between 130 to 185% of the poverty line qualifying for reduced price lunch. And so don't get me wrong, providing free/reduced price meals is incredibly important, and one area that the program gets right. Like, this is very, very important. And we're gonna get to the impacts of that later and the importance of that later. But yeah, and so providing free/low priced lunch can take a large burden off of families by not forcing them to have to provide the food to their children, and so they can reallocate that budget to places that they also need to put it to. Still, students can often fall through the cracks of not given proper resources to know about or fill out the application. For example, like language barriers as well can be a big part of that. And so the system has its shortcomings, but this is one area that we should appreciate our school lunch program for. However, where the program falls dismally short is the food which it provides. I'm probably gonna cut this out because I don't know if I want to slur in my writing 122 final, but I posted a picture of me with a flag on my Instagram, and one of my friends commented the flag like thumbs up, but I thought it said something else. You're so right. Anyways. If you haven't tried Chobani coffee creamer, try it. I know we're talking about unhealthy foods. Everything in moderation, everyone. Anyways, oh, my fucking back hurts. Okay, by far the most criticized element of the National School Lunch Program is the unhealthiness of the foods. The ones I remember best were like pizza and the juice bars and these little like, I fucking hate cornbread, which I was born in Atlanta, Georgia, so like I'm not supposed to hate cornbread, but there were these little like, they tasted like donuts. They were really good, and that was the problem. So let's get into that. As discussed previously, school lunches really took a big hit from Reaganomics, causing schools to have to resort to contracts with things like fast food companies, soda companies, and schools had to find a way that they could save money and provide food to students, causing them to resort to these cheaper options. So even schools that didn't enter contracts with corporations often had to switch to ready-made meals that could be made by simply heating them up or other simple methods, and this saved a lot of money on equipment and also labor. So finally taking action, the Obama administration, and I'm just gonna preface this here, I don't wanna hear people being like, the Obamas did blah, 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 blah. We're not talking about the other blah, blah, blah. I'm not saying they're saints. I'm just saying they did this, okay? So I don't wanna hear it. What was I saying? Anyways, they worked hard to pass the Healthy, Hunger-Free Act in 2010, with the campaign largely led by Michelle Obama. This new act set heavy restrictions on what could be served in schools to students, setting new guidelines such as requiring vegetables and certain proportions of macronutrient. While being a major step towards creating a healthy school lunch environment for kids, the act has major loopholes that corporations, of course, who had skin in the game, they took advantage of. What did you expect? Morality? No. One of the most famous of these is the fact that pizza could previously, they've changed this, thank God, fill the vegetable requirement because of the tomato paste in it. Like, politicians were actually like arguing that the tomato paste had the adequate nutrients. This has been revamped so that it doesn't work, but there are still plenty of loopholes here like this that many companies have taken advantage of. So right now, like, a lot of the restrictions have to do with the macronutrients. So if a company meets these certain ratios. And again, that's carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, specifically saturated fats, the ones we really care about. Essentially, these are 3 big parts of your diet, and you need a good amount of them, especially carbohydrates, to get through the day, but also getting them in certain forms is important. But essentially what this means is that if companies are serving products that fit the macronutrient requirement, they can still continue to serve these highly processed foods in school, and consumption of which has been associated with a 22% higher mortality rate. So in 2018, the USDA imposed a bill that was meant to allow flexibilities for the benefit of the dairy and grain industry. So this was like another hit to the Obama's act there, where it reduced the whole grain percentage requirements. Again, that's like what we're talking about with our carbohydrates. Like, they're important, but you need them in certain forms. And it also allowed for options for flavored / sugary milks to be permanently offered in schools. And these were cut out because that is not necessary. Our children don't need these things, okay? Don't rant yet, Jesus Christ. So one area where this organization, my dad's calling me. 1 second. We're back. My dad was trying to get me to go watch some March Madness games with him, and I did get my bracket in, and I will be not doing that this year. Besides the point. One area where this act has made significant impact is on childhood obesity rates for families below the poverty line. While not having a significant change on childhood obesity rates in the country overall, the obesity rates of children from families in poverty has been decreasing every year since the bill was passed. And so this is likely due to what we've discussed earlier, where food insecurities link with obesity. Oftentimes, healthier foods are more expensive. And so by this being the case, families are forced to turn to the less healthy, cheaper options. And so by providing food to families for free or reduced price, and by adjusting the parameters to make things healthier, I wouldn't call them healthy, but healthier, kids are getting access to foods that they're likely on average healthier. And it also allows families to have more money in their budgets that they can choose to purchase healthier options if that is the right decision for them. So here's everyone's favorite question. What the fuck are we gonna do now? We've addressed the problem, we've complained. What now? That's the best part of the video essay, where you're just left with what's the point? Why did I just watch that? You know, now I'm just sad. Or do I just say, well, damn, that sucks, and go on with my life? I don't know. Maybe you can turn the video off right now if you want to, but I'd say addressing the issue is the first step, because a lot of these things we take for granted. That is just a fact. And I also hate to say it, but I'm a 19-year-old who does not have the solutions to this massive systemic and ingrained issue of corporate influence. That being said, I believe one of the most reliable solutions is reallocation of government spending. The problem of unhealthy lunches kind of originally spawned from that lack of funding, forcing schools to resort to those cheaper options. And it's no secret that public school programs do not receive adequate funding in a multitude of areas. Let's fucking pay our teachers more. My dad's an elementary school teacher, and he's doing God's work, and other people are also doing God's work, and this shit is not paid enough. That's another topic. That's another video essay topic. Anyways, obviously that funding has to be reallocated from somewhere, and a popular choice is often our military budget, as like the spending's been really high and we're in crazy massive debt. So how do you even pronounce this number? I don't know how to pronounce that number. That's crazy. So again, I'm not an economics major. I'm not a poli-sci major. I don't have all the answers, and I know I don't. One school lunch program that has been heavily praised for its lack of reliance on unhealthy foods is that of Peru's called, I'm gonna butcher this, Kaliwarma. Let's pray to God I said that right. This program hinges on federally supplying cash and raw food goods to schools, in addition to certain like processed foods that can be healthy when prepared correctly, such as like rice, pasta, packaged chicken, things like that. And a major limitation in Peru is this lack of equipment for preservation, so a lot of things can perish if not stored properly, and also like perishables aren't an option, such as fruits and vegetables, if not super local. So this is an area that I think the United States could, like, we're a lot stronger in this, and I think if we took advantage of a system like this, we could really benefit from it. And so there is that issue of paying for labor. This is gonna require a lot more labor. but it is possible that the labor saved on processing these foods before they come to these schools can be saved, and potentially making these raw goods the cheaper option to save money in the end. Still, unfortunately, that's a project to unpack for another day. Well, I don't think we solved the issue of school lunches. I don't think we solved anything, honestly, other than making people more aware of things and increasing my back pain, because my mattress here at home does not do what it needs to do, and I got scoliosis and life is painful and miserable. I enjoyed making this video, and I hope you learned something, and I hope you're more aware. And obviously the best place to start is political action. Vote. Gen Z, myself, I'm looking at you because you guys don't like to vote. Everyone likes to be like, no, I don't need to vote. My vote doesn't mean anything. Yes, it does. Just go do it. Please just go do it. And just keep things like that in mind. With that being said, I'm gonna go watch some March Madness now. And then spend probably a century editing this video because I'm fucked around too much. Okay, bye. Thanks for watching.